Well, there's never enough of Brian. Can you possibly get enough of Brian White? There's just no way. Well, if you can't get enough of him on this channel, then you go over to his channel, My Tesla Weekend, and or follow him on X or follow him on Patreon. Or are there other places to follow you, Brian, besides?
Who knows, man? Who knows? People follow me when I go into stores all the time. I think it's because they're fans and not because I'm definitely shoplifting. So could be anything.
Or because of some other reasons. Stalkers. Are they female?
Yeah. No, they're big gentlemen with shirts that say security. So I think they're just fans.
That's probably right. So, Brian, there have been rumors and speculation and headlines that make no sense. And then there's some other ones that commonly do that might be making sense. I have my own particular things that I'm the most interested in. If I was able to stand in front of Elon and his executive team, I would have very specific questions that would always begin with Reno. Reno drives me crazy. I don't know what it is about Reno, but I do know part of the reason is because Reno is going to be making 4680s. Reno is going to be making semi-trucks. Reno, there's speculation that maybe some of the bots will be made in Reno. I mean, they're going to be doing all these things at Reno, and yet there's no groundbreaking. And so my first question is, after they took out the capacity to make megapacks, wouldn't that have given them some space to do something? And could they potentially be setting up at least some kind of a line or some kind of a unboxing or whatever they're going to call it for my second favorite product that's coming, which is the after Optimus bots? I love the Cybertruck, but number two for me is the Semi. Could they be getting ready to make a few more semis?
So there's great rumors. The drone pilot, Zangler, kept saying there's these production meetings we see outside. This looks like the start of construction to me. I don't know the basis for that conclusion. Production meetings happen outside factories all the time. And then we saw that there's new postings that went up, new job listings saying, oh, we need all these, and they say semi right on them. But all of those hirings to build a semi line before the building has even begun feels premature. It feels like something else is afoot. It's been pointed out that there is a real shortage of engineering talent in Reno. Not to say Reno isn't, as Sean Connery put it, the greatest little shitty in the world, because it is pretty shitty. But there's the amount of talent is already in use, and getting people to Reno is a big ask. A lot of people think, oh, Vegas is, nice. I like the heat. And then they move to Reno and realize that its winters are pretty brutal and dry and brown and beige. It's the high desert. So getting the talent there is going to be tricky. You have to bring them in from scratch. And there's not a lot of housing, and the housing keeps getting more expensive. And Sparks is not in Reno. It's like a half hour out of, it's like a commute along a very narrow road that gets busy. So there's challenges. So what's going on in Reno? It looks like they're ramping up hiring. A building like that could probably be built a lot quicker than an automotive assembly factory. So it's entirely possible we could see production in literally 1 year from now, but it is uncertain. I know when you look at electric semis from Peterbilt, those are built on stations, but they're still making them at low volume, I'd say low hundreds. And then you look at eCascadia, theirs is built on an actual assembly line. But they have still only sold hundreds, not yet thousands. I was able to get that information on background from someone from Freightliner. But Tesla doesn't want to do stations. They want to do an assembly line. And they have a pilot for that located in Nevada at the building that used to be for receiving. It was one of the receiving buildings. It's the building where the big delivery event was held, the semi-delivery event. But it feels like they're putting the cart before the horse. It appears it's definitely going to happen in Nevada. but I don't understand the timeline. I don't understand any of that. And to answer your question about the floor space freed up from Megapack production, I would assume that's already been put into use for battery production.
Oh, okay.
Because the original plan was that 4680s out of Texas would be sufficient to carry Texas, and it is not. That line is very delayed, which means that all of the Model Ys coming out of Texas are using 2170s that are coming from Nevada. There was also a Panasonic factory that was going to be making 4680s, a separate one. They have pushed out their completion date so that they're not going to have their 4680s ready until next year.
Okay.
So there's a shortage of 4680s, and that causes a ripple effect. Those 2170s now need to go in the Models 3 and Y. They're also for the Semi. The Semi takes, 5-10 cars worth of batteries every time you build one. It's challenging to keep the supplies going. And you figure there's 5,000 in every car. Make 1 million cars, that's 5 billion batteries you need. That adds up real quick.
So what about if they've got these folks that are starting to be hired, what about back to making 100 a month or making 200 a month, like you're talking about some of these smaller makers do in preparation, getting more of them on the road, so to speak?
I think that's probably the plan. I think that's the only plan that makes sense right now is take that pilot line that's in the smaller building and see how fast you can get it running. Because they definitely have, when Elon said that they have enough batteries, it wasn't enough batteries for infinite cars, but for the roadmap as it was stated. He has since said, I saw an article last week saying that he has said that the problem with the Semi is battery availability. Oh. And that's not to say we couldn't build 100. That's to say we can't build, 2,000 a week. Oh,
40,000 is his original plan, right? Yeah.
Yeah, 40,000 would be, that's a lot of batteries. That's a lot of batteries. But to make, 5,000, maybe they could probably do that. And it would certainly be interesting to see what you could get that very small line up to in advance of the big line being built. And that's why you need these experts, these senior people, these positions that you can't fill internally, because we need someone from Cascadia, from Peterbilt, from Mack, who have competencies in big rigs, who have competencies in perhaps also electric big rig manufacturing, to bring them in and get the pilot line itself up to a good speed, which is quite possible.
And start doing the planning for the eventual line. So yes, we've talked about 4680s a lot just in the last few moments. Do we have any kind of update? That would be the other question. I mean, my second question, if I was standing in front of the august leadership at Tesla, would be what the heck and when?
Yeah, the answer is we don't know what the heck is going on. We've seen some stirring out at the Cato Road facility. We were under the impression that things were going pretty well already by Battery Day. It's clear that that was not the case. Maybe a year ago now, they said, we have produced our millionth cell. And we all scratched our heads and said, that's not enough cells. You should have had that.
Sounds like a big number.
It sounds like a big number. You should have had that a year ago. That's not very many cells. And I don't know what the problem is, but the problem appears to be something larger than Tesla, because again, Panasonic's 4680 has not surfaced. If you type in the name of any one of the major battery manufacturers and add 4680, almost without fail, you'll find that they are planning to introduce that form factor as well, but none of them have. You can buy cheap Chinese knockoffs that are that shape, but that doesn't mean they're any good. So there is something bedeviling about the form factor that goes beyond the tabless design, because the other manufacturers are not using a tabless design. They're using more of a 3-tab or 5-tab design. So yeah, it's tricky.
With the glut of batteries on the market, which was just mentioned by LG the other day, and the apparent 33% reduction in the overall cost of batteries since the beginning of 2023, would it be possible well, they obviously already switched over the Model Ys. Is it possible to use those kind of, use a different form factor in the Semi in order to get more of those rolling out?
So I assumed that the semi was going to be using 4680s. When it first showed up, I got inside information that it was using 2170s. I don't see a reason why the form factor would matter. If they could get, S or X type batteries in sufficient quantity, they could use them. We've seen, depending on the model, depending on the factory, Tesla buys different kinds of cells from just about everyone, and they're not all cylindrical. They use blade batteries in the standard range out of Shanghai. They use 2 to 3 different cylinders in different models of different sizes. So yes, if somebody came along and said, hey, check it out, we've got an infinite supply of this particular battery, as long as the watt hours per kilogram works, I don't see any reason why Tesla couldn't adopt it for the semi.
Yeah. Okay, so if we go to Fremont for just a second, I heard a rumor from, I guess it's not a rumor because we have drone footage, that there's some construction going on up in Fremont that might be interesting, although maybe we don't know what it's for.
Well, so there's been very heavy foundations put in just right next to the casting building. I believe this is for additional mega castings, giga castings, that could potentially be used in the Model 3 Highland refresh, in the 3 fresh, because they are, from cutaways that we've seen of the vehicle, it looks like it is able to be swapped out. The way they are stamped is different than the way they used to be stamped, and the stamping ends at the firewall, which is where a casting would normally attach anyway. It may be that when Highland launches out of Fremont, they will launch day 1 with castings, and that would not be surprising to me. So this building should be coming online. The foundation is done and curing. By the end of the month, it'll be sufficiently cured that they could put the stamping, the casting equipment onto it without it cracking the foundation. And they would be able to realistically have that dialed in by the end of Q4 and be ready for Highland production with castings from there.
Wow, that's interesting. Okay. You also had, we've talked a lot about Berlin. We've seen permits, we've seen discussions, we've seen conversations, we've seen meetings, we've seen unions and people fighting back and or something. Where are we on Berlin?
Well, it's going up quick if what you're asking about is the grass in the clearing. It's growing. It's growing very fast. But I don't think that's what you meant.
No.
They cleared it. No, they cleared it. They got permits, and now they're kind of waiting. But the question is, what are they waiting for? Are they waiting for permits? Maybe. But I think what they're waiting for is groundbreaking in Mexico, because we've been told that Mexico will be the pilot, the flagship for the new design iteration. And we know from the time that they did Texas and Berlin at the same time, there was a whole lot of rework in Texas, presumably because they figured something out first in Berlin. And I think they want to avoid that kind of rework in the future, at least get Mexico started first so we know what we're doing and then build it there. And I have seen people say, well, we've got to, but they can just build it and then fix it. Right. It's not like that. There's parts that need to be done right. You don't want to have to go back and move columns. That's invasive surgery. You don't want to have to go back in and dig out 20 feet for a giant floating raft slab foundation after the fact. That's very difficult once the building is already in place, and extra cost and extra hassle and a whole new batch of delays. So just like how they're trying to eliminate all the expedite times for the delivery wave at the end of each quarter, it also makes sense to slow down a little and get the factory right the first time, especially since if these factories are going to be making 2 million cars each, where on earth are you getting the batteries from? So we kind of have to, it would make more sense to grow into it rather than vastly outstrip the market's ability to provide batteries for it in the first place.
Well, so then that brings up Mexico, and we certainly had news this last week on Mexico. We think that the water thing is maybe behind us. The environmental permits are about ready to be signed off, or were signed off on, or are virtually signed off on, and so that the mayor or the governor or the president of Sierra Leone, whatever his title was saying, hey, we're 2 to 3 weeks out.
Yeah. And there was questions I was asked recently. Is it, we've seen Tom Ju has said, we're going to build it faster than Shanghai. That's an aspirational target. That's not a real target. Shanghai was built on a melon farm. It was already flat. It was already clear. All they had to do was sink foundations and build. Mexico is not only on a slope, it's on rocky terrain. It's going to take more time than Texas to get that land level and buildable, unless they just knock over a nearby hill and use it for fill dirt, which they could also do, but that's still moving mountains, something Tesla has done before. Yes. So they can do that, I suppose. It's not going to be built in a year. Now, with that said, if it takes 6 months to level and they start construction, we could see first production as soon as 18 months after that. So we are still looking at 2025. But that's a while from now. That's a little time out from now. Yeah. And that means that the other factories building compacts, maybe not until 26, 27. So we're starting to run into our 2030 deadline to get past 10 million, ideally to 20 million cars. But we'll see what happens.
It's worse than that. You're making it more difficult to hit my 2027 deadline. I don't care about your 2030 deadline.
That's fair. That's fair, Randy. And I apologize
thank
for
you.
my
appreciate that.
Yeah.
It's so big of you.
My Brian-centric view of the world.
Yes. Well, okay. That's all very interesting. What did we leave out? Oh, that's your line. I can't steal that.
Texas.
The
expansion to the south end appears to have been capped off. They still are putting in more piers, more continuous flight auger drilled piers to support construction. But in the meantime, they've capped off the extension they put on the building and put roads in around it. So it is very unclear what's going on with that extension. Now, some people had said this is definitely for the compact model. It's not. It's certainly not definitely. It could be for something to do with the compact model, but it's the wrong shape and size to build a full assembly line. And the initial permits for that expansion are over a year old, well over a year old. I started tracking them when they filed the initial permits well before the main building was complete, and it just never materialized. So trying to understand what they're doing without an actual press release is difficult. It's still difficult with a press release, but I grow very tired of all the armchair experts on social media who see a headline and assume that they know for sure what's going on. You've got to get multiple sources. You got to dig to find their sources, and you got to look at actual permits, and then understand before you say that something is definitely happening, you have to ask if it's even possible.
Yeah.
So we'll see. And again, this comes back to what we're saying with the Cybertruck earlier. Part of it is it's okay to wait sometimes and just not know the answer. There can be peace in that.
So, okay, I'm gonna sit here in my armchair and I'm gonna connect some dots of what you've just told me, which is all fresh to me, and I'm gonna do a quick speculation based on what we've heard and what you think and what you believe and what we basically barely understand. I'm gonna say that one way or the other, and it may be an entirely new building that will be built that we don't even know about yet. And it might even be in a different part of town. It might be in Dallas. I don't know where it'll be. They will begin to make Gen 3 cars by the end of next year, beginning of 2025, somehow. That's going to be my number. That's put that on the list of the things you're checking me on to find out whether or not I'm completely on another planet. I'm saying that there's no way they're delaying this until Mexico is fully built out at the end of 2025 or into 2026. So that's my note. And then your speculation that they're going to wait for Berlin to do Mexico or Mexico to do Berlin. I can't see to wait to do them both at the same time. I'm going to say if Mexico really is 2 years out, I'm going to put a big no on that.
Because it will be interesting to see.
They're not going to wait on Berlin. if Berlin can be built in a year, assuming that they figure out the water thing and everything in the next couple of weeks, and that they really could, add another building or whatever they're going to do in a year or 15 months. I don't think they're going to wait for Mexico for an additional 6 to 9 months in order to get going. So that's my kind of take on all of that. I think it's too important. It's not even money. I don't think it's money or it's the mission. And so I think the mission is too important to put off the Gen 3 until basically, I think what you're really saying is that would be the beginning of 2026 before there'd be any serious chance of starting to ramp.
Yep. And I will gladly be in disagreement with you on this. The permits we've seen in Berlin say that of the things they plan to build, the compact line would be the last one they build. So it would make more sense to do the first iteration there, because the land is clear and level, and the market is just as big for affordable compacts throughout Europe as it is anywhere.
Yeah.
So, but I don't believe it'll happen in Texas. If it was going to happen in Texas, they have land that's already kind of ready to build on at the north end of the factory. They're currently using this big, beautiful rectangle field just to store equipment right now. That would be very easy to build on. They have requested permits to put in an access road across it. But building it in Texas and then having another one just a few hours away doesn't make sense to me, especially when the number of countries with free trade agreements. There are 20 countries that have free trade agreements with the US, and there are 50 that have free trade agreements with Mexico, and those are all in Latin America and Asia. So those are, there's a lot more export potential from Mexico than there is from Texas.
Yes. And so just so that you and the audience know, I am not in any way trying to undermine anything that my expert is saying. I'm just playing around with the dots.
Right. Fun. And that's the important thing is we're both speculating, and we're both trying to find the dots that make the most sense. And it's the most likely outcome is we're both wrong.
That's probably true.
Yeah.
And the most ironic will be the most likely outcome, according to our fearless leader. Brian, as always, it's amazing to have you on here. Follow Brian on My Tesla Weekend, wherever you find those words all in a row. And then you can also, if you can't get, if 3 times a day of seeing me on this channel is not enough, from time to time, I show up on Brian's channel and you'll get to see more. So there you go.
Isn't it crazy? What is this, a crossover episode?
It is could be.
Yeah.
Could be.
Yeah.
I know. Yes. Well, all right. So thank you again, Brian. And thank you to all of you for supporting the channel, supporting Brian. Support us every way you can think of, because, man, we could use the support. And it's been great talking to all of you. If you don't mind, I do want to pitch my little device here. I have these little devices for $25. You can't believe how cool this is. Look at how thick the stainless. I mean, holy mackerel! It comes in. It comes in a camo as well. It's a can opener. I mean, I'm sorry, not a can opener, a bottle opener. So you got your bottle opener here too, and it's got a magnet on the back, so you can slap it up on your fridge. I mean, is this good or what? So anyway, you just send $25 to my PayPal account. It's down in the information below. Just click on there. You can send it 20. Now, if you're out of the country, I got to charge you an extra $20 for freight. So, or if you join my Patreon, I'll give you one at the $10 level. I'll give you one for free.
Click the link below to get your paperback, Kindle, or audiobook now.